Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to explore this awe-inspiring, completely invisible nation operating right inside your veins. We go through our busy days completely unaware of the massive, highly coordinated military campaigns happening just under our skin. But today, we're going to change that. We're translating some incredible insights about our cellular defenders into a clear journey to show you exactly how your body fights to keep you alive.
We're starting off with some fascinating historical wisdom from the father of chemistry, Jabir bin Hayyan. Well, actually, his teacher perfectly framed the high-stakes invisible war happening inside us with this profound quote. And what's incredible about this observation from centuries ago is how ridiculously accurate it is today. The biological threats we face and the forces that protect us are completely invisible to the naked eye. And as we'll see, our defenders really do stem from one incredible source.
Here is our military dossier for today. We'll look at the invisible war within, trace the blood cell family tree, check out the Transport and Engineer Corps, the Cellular Police Force, elite commandos and ordnance, and finally, how we train the Army using vaccines.
All right, Part 1, The Invisible War Within.
To really get a grip on this defense system, we first need to understand the sheer scale of the battlefield. It's a biological network that honestly puts any modern human civilization to shame. Our defenders are continuously patrolling 75,000 miles of blood vessels. I mean, just take a second to wrap your head around that number. 75,000 miles? This sprawling network exists to protect a literal nation of 60 trillion cellular citizens inside your body. Every single tissue, every organ, every vein is constantly being monitored. The security and logistical needs are absolutely monumental.
Moving on to Part 2, the blood cell family tree. So where does this massive army actually come from? How does the body manufacture such a diverse set of specialized cells to monitor 75,000 miles of territory? Well, it turns out every single cell originates from one single ancestor, known as the grandpa cell. This grandpa cell then splits its descendants into two totally distinct, highly specialized branches. One branch becomes the red blood cells. They handle all the transportation and civilian logistics. The other branch? Those become the white blood cells, which are strictly dedicated to the armed forces and national defense. But despite having totally different jobs, they all share that exact same origin.
Which brings us to Part 3, Transport and Engineer Corps.
Let's look at the critical logistics keeping this nation alive and running smoothly. The red blood cells manage a grueling, never-ending supply chain. Their job isn't combat at all, it's pure survival logistics. They ensure fresh oxygen is delivered to all 60 trillion citizens, but as those cells consume resources, they create a lot of toxic waste. We're talking a staggering volume of cellular garbage here. So the red blood cells meticulously collect this toxic byproduct and transport it straight to the body's drainage systems, so your kidneys, lungs, intestines, and sweat glands, safely getting it out of the system.
Meanwhile, we've got the platelets acting as tireless engineers. And what's wild here is that internal damage and microscopic bleeding are happening inside us literally every single day, and we don't even notice it. But the second there's a breach, platelets rush to the scene. They physically stick themselves together to seal the wound and stop the blood loss. They're constantly doing this background maintenance on our internal wear and tear, so the whole system doesn't just, completely collapse.
All right, Part 4, the Cellular Police Force.
Switching over to the Armed Forces branch, let's meet your frontline responders. Granulocytes are basically the vigilant beat cops of your bloodstream. But unlike human police, they don't sit around waiting in stations. Awake, asleep, it doesn't matter. They are constantly patrolling. When they spot an alien germ, they sound the alarm and attack with absolutely zero fear. Their main tactic is literally sticking to the invading germ to destroy it. And honestly, this often means sacrificing themselves in what's essentially a cellular suicide attack, just to keep you safe. If an enemy is too big, multiple granulocytes will actually merge together just to completely smother the threat.
Now, this defense system is usually flawless, but there is one terrifying exception. When the HIV or AIDS virus enters the body, something chilling happens to these dedicated police forces. Instead of attacking, they just turn a blind eye. The virus essentially neutralizes them. It allows these microscopic terrorists to operate and destroy right in front of them without a single shred of resistance. It really highlights how devastating it is when our first line of defense gets compromised.
Let's move to Part 5, Elite Commandos and Ordnance.
So what happens when enemies are just too tough or too strange for the standard police to handle? The body calls in the heavy hitters, monocytes and macrophages. These are your Special Services Group commandos,
completely built for the absolute toughest combat scenarios. When regular white blood cells can't recognize a germ, these multi-skilled, tough-as-nails units step right in. And they don't just kill unknown enemies, they physically capture them and literally drag them to the nearest checkpoint to hand over to military intelligence.
And once those commandos capture an enemy, they hand it over to military intelligence, known as the lymphocytes. First up, you have the T cells, acting like a massive computer hard drive. They study the germ and store a permanent memory file of its exact structure. And get this, they can remember it for up to 50 years. Then they signal the plasma cells. Acting as the artillery branch, plasma cells can manufacture up to 1 million different types of custom chemical weapons, antibodies, specifically tailored to absolutely annihilate that exact enemy.
Now, knowing just how sophisticated this military is, it totally begs the question, how can we give them advanced intel before a real war even starts? Like, how do we hand our commandos and artillery units the blueprints of the enemy without actually putting the whole nation at risk?
That brings us to Part 6, training the Army through vaccines. This is honestly one of the most brilliant medical interventions in human history, and it works entirely by cooperating with your internal military infrastructure. Vaccines act as a highly controlled training simulation. By introducing dead or deactivated germs into the body, we allow those brilliant T cells to safely study the enemy's internal structure without the risk of getting an actual disease. The T cells create their 50-year memory file, they figure out exactly which chemical weapons are needed, and boom. Because of this pre-training, if a live version of that germ ever attacks in the future, specific white blood cells can identify and neutralize it in a matter of minutes rather than days.
To see how this translates into real-world strategy, let's look at the polio vaccine. Polio drops are given orally for a very specific reason, to train the defenders at the exact border crossing the virus uses. Since the live polio virus naturally enters the human body through contaminated water or food, it first arrives in the intestines. By deploying the vaccine orally, your intestinal white blood cells learn about the enemy right there on the front line. They can kill a future live virus before it ever even reaches the bloodstream. It's strategic deployment at its absolute finest.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to just take a moment to marvel at your internal military. Ask yourself, what invisible battles did you just win today without even lifting a finger? From the logistical masterminds delivering your oxygen, to the fearless patrol cops and elite commandos taking down microscopic terrorists, your very survival depends on their relentless dedication. Keep that in mind the next time you think you're just sitting still. There's an entire universe fighting for you inside.